This is practice unit assessment number 1 for National 5 expressions and formulae. I'm going to complete questions 3, 4 and 5. They make up the standard 1.2, which is the second outcome. Right, what I can see I've got to do, I've got some brackets to multiply out and simplify. I've got some factorising to do, and I've got completing the square question. Let's go ahead with multiplying brackets out, and we'll start with 3a. Okay. Right, when we multiply a bracket out, a single bracket like this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply each of the terms inside the bracket by the term outside. So that's going to give me 4d squared. I'm going to multiply d times minus e, and that's going to give me minus de. And that's that question done. For part B, I've got a double bracket to multiply out, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this bracket out using FOIL. Okay, so the firsts multiplied together will give me g squared. The outsides will give me plus 9g. The insides will give me plus 4g. And finally the lasts will give me plus 36. I'll gather up the middle terms here, and that should complete this question here. Okay. Moving on to question 4. And question 4 was all around factorising. Factorising, just putting it into brackets, so the reverse of what we've done up above. Okay, so this question here looks like a common factor question. So what's common between the two terms is y, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take y outside the bracket. So y times something gives me y squared, so it must be just y times y, and y times something gives me minus 6y, so it's going to be a minus 6 that's going to appear in there. That's that question complete. For part B, I've got t squared minus 49. This one here looks like a difference of squares. I can see that there's a difference here because I've got a minus sign in between them. That's a squared term, and that's also a squared term as well. So I'm going to put that into two brackets. So I'm going to have t and t, and I'm going to take the square root of this number here, the 49, so that should give me a 7 and a 7. And the way it works out, we go for a minus and a plus. That's that completed. I'll go for part C. Right, part C is a trinomial, okay, a three-part equation that I need to solve. What I'm going to do here also is to factorise it. I'm going to put it into two brackets. Okay, so for this type here, I can just go straight to factorising it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put an x in here and an x in here, because I know by FOIL these first two terms make the first term in the trinomial. The last two terms will be made up to multiply and get 12. So I need to think about the factors of 12. So I'm interested in the factors of 12, the numbers that multiply together to get 12, but out of these numbers I can make a difference of 7. So if I think I'm 1 and 12, then I can't make a difference of 7. I could make 11 by taking 1 away from 12, or I could make 13. If I think of 2 and 6, I could make 4 by taking 2 away from 6, or I could make 8 by adding them together. I think of 3 and 4. 3 and 4, if I add them together, I could make 7. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a 3 here, I'm going to put a 4 in there. I'm going to look at the signs. That sign's a positive, so that tells me that both of these are positives, or they're both negatives. If I look at this sign after that, I see that's a positive, so they must be positives. If I'm not sure how to do that, what I would do is I would set up a wee table to work through the question. The x's I would put here, okay, and I would consider all the factors of 12. So we thought of 1 and 12, we thought of 2 and 6, and then 3 and 4. I would then just work through the table by multiplying across the way, and across that way there, and gathering these up, and I've got 13x. I'm going to compare that with the 7x. If they're the same, I've found the factors. In this case I haven't. 1 and 12 are not the factors. I'll just continue along the table, just doing the same thing, gathering them up, and again 8x is not the same as that, so these are not the factors. Multiplying across here, 4x, multiplying across here, 3x, gather together, that gives me 7x, So what I can see there is that's the exact same as the middle term, so that's going to be my factors. The way I would put it into the bracket, I'd gather that x there with the 3, that gives me the x plus 3 in the first bracket, that one there with that 4 there, and that gives me the x plus 4 in the second bracket. And that's a way of factorising if I can't go straight and do it into the brackets. Okay, let's look at question 5. Right, so for question 5, what we have is we're going to try and express x squared plus 6x plus 7 in the form of x plus p squared plus q. And that's a difference of squares form. Okay, so when I've just got an x squared there, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find a number I'm going to use, a magic number if I want to call it that. So I'm going to work out what a half of the coefficient of x is, half of 6, that gives me 3. Okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it up in this kind of form. What I'm going to have is I'm going to start with an x, then I'm going to take away something squared, and then that 7 there, I've got a plus 7 at the end that I'm going to gather up right at the end of the work. The 3 I'm going to put into two places. I'm going to put it in there and in there. So it's not a minus 3, it's a positive 3, so I'm putting it in as a positive number. What I'll then do is I'm going to square this bracket out, so that should give me minus 9 and plus 7. And then when I gather up the 7 right at the end, minus 9 plus 7 will give me minus 2. Okay. Right, let's go back and have a look at how we would mark the questions that we've got here. So going back to question 3. Go back to question 3. Right, the first mark that I'm going to get is going to be for multiplying out. So that whole thing there must be shown. For 3b, I'm going to get a mark for multiplying this part out here, and I'm going to also then get another mark for gathering the two middle terms together and finalising that part. I'm going to get a mark in question 4 for factorising this part here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a mark for the difference of squares, just this straight one here. I'm going to get 2 marks for part C, and the first thing that I'm going to get is kind of evidence of the x, the 3 and the 4 being used, okay? And the final mark would be for completing that factorisation. So that was a mark for getting an x, for getting 3 and a 4 in some way, so that would be a mark that I would be getting there and finalising with that one. Question 5, okay. Question 5, I'd be looking for 2 marks here. The first mark would be for this part here, being squared, and the final mark would be for this part here, okay. And that's outcome 1.2.